did you see all that shit going on about the Street Fighter costume thing?
What?
The fan costume.
I
So
did not.
Street Fighter, Capcom has put out a like fan costume design contest where anybody could submit their designs, and they would pick 12 of them, and then the 12 get voted on, and then 2 of them will be picked to actually be put in the game.
I'm for it.
And yeah, so that's going on. And, aside from the bracket that is, I'm sure these artists are not getting paid if they sell their costume. So
Yeah.
that shenanigans aside, it's so funny seeing everybody get so salty when it's like, guess what's the popular costume? It's Jury with showing skin, or
Oh
it's
my
Jury
God.
doing this. And everybody gets so upset. And it's like,
Look,
here's
if my
the thing.
girl wants a
Here's-
string bikini, it's
Yeah.
all good.
no, but here's the thing, right? It's like, I understand the frustration. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But it's when it goes from, man, I'm tired of people just voting for the skimpy girl costume, to, yeah, all Jury's players are degenerates and they're horny pieces of shit and they should all go die. And it's just like, okay, you know what?
The
Like-
escalation is so fun.
It's
irrational.
funny. It's funny until you start realizing this is how like all bad things in terms of mob mentality happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people always just take it so far because of like, I have no idea what the drive is. In this funny sense, I guess it's to be funny and to like, get a reaction out of people when they say shit like this, but it's just like, Jesus Christ, people.
No,
come on.
they're playing it straight. Like, they legitimately, I have no doubt in my mind that a majority of the people that you're describing that think like, oh, now like the escalation of that idea of like, why are you going for the skimpy costume, even though you know why you're going for the skimpy costume, to the people who are like, Jury players are thoughts and degenerates and you need to fucking kill yourself or uninstall the game.
Yeah.
Those people are playing it straight, and I think it's funny because they're
God damn it, now we can't use this. You stupid motherfucker.
I'll bleep it.
You stupid son of a bitch.
I'll bleep that too.
You can bleep all what I'm saying. Nobody gets offended by that, especially because of who I'm calling a stupid motherfucker.
Yeah, I'll be bleeping a ton of content. I'm just gonna bleep anything randomly. This
I mean, you know what?
podcast.
We're already in offensive territory, so fuck it.
Yeah,
Bring
yeah.
us in.
All right. Well, welcome to the Otaku Remix Podcast, everybody. My name is Brando. That on the other end of the universe is Mr. Christopher House,
No.
and with more gusto. And today we're talking about the incredibly bizarre, fun, colorful, and unique
That's an
Netflix
interesting
anime.
way to describe it.
It really is. It's a special little snowflake. I'm gonna
Okay.
call it what I believe it's called: Dorohedoro, Dorohe.
Dorohedoro.
Dorohedoro. There's another anime which I'll get into, sounds eerily similar, but yeah, Dorohedoro, the
Yeah.
anime featuring the large crocodile man and the cute blonde girl. The new anime on Netflix as of this past spring. So it's been on for the last few months or so, and we finally got a chance to check it out, you and I.
Yeah.
And we just kind of wanted to talk about the series today. So going into that, Chris, your impression, because I know that we were kind of just spitballing, like, what the fuck do we want to talk about this week? And
I think, I had Dorohedoro. I'm just going to call it DHD now.
There you go, DHD is fine. Whatever. As long as we get...
So, yeah. So, DHD has been on my radar mostly because of the ending OPs, actually. They came up on my YouTube recommendations, and, like, some of those things are fucking hot fire. So, I was like, okay, I'll give the show a shot.
Mm-hmm.
It is unabashedly violent, grotesque, over the top, and camp, while also still hitting the right notes in terms of characters. Like, nobody feels like... People feel exaggerated for sure, but it's not like villains are made out to be good people or stuff like that. they kind of hit the right marks in terms of character dynamics and stuff like that. So it's a good show overall. It's just something I on the long list of anime, a show I enjoy but can't recommend to everybody.
Yeah,
But
for
then again,
understandable
violence
reasons.
goes over much better with the Americans than sexualization does. So
Yeah, it's a weird thing. That's a whole other conversation.
that's a
but-
whole other conversation. but yeah, I enjoyed it overall. It's fun.
Yeah, no, I really liked it quite a bit. It's not exactly the most, I don't think, profoundly deep series, but there's a spirit to it that I think is something that is extremely endearing, and it is just fun to watch. It's like from a visual standpoint, there's just a lot to digest, and it throws a lot at you. And
Yeah,
but there's
another
a
show that does 3D well.
Yes, yeah. Most of the time, there are there's some moments where the 3D is a little bit stiff, but most of the time, I think that they blend. They being Studio Mappa, who did this, and they do wonderful work overall. But yeah, they blend 3D pretty well with the 2D, and they handle what is essentially a very chaotic aesthetic. I think pretty interestingly. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I had fun with it too. And I guess just for anybody who hasn't seen it, minor spoilers. I don't think we'll get too deep into it, but as far as the premise is concerned, Dorohedoro is a story that kind of takes place between like more or less a tale of two cities. Not exactly like in regards to that story, but I mean, it takes place in
Actually.
a little bit. But yeah, it takes place in like a total slum, terrible, miserable city called the Hole, and then also more or less also takes place in a separate dimension of sorcerers. And it kind of follows the story of these two characters. One, the aforementioned large crocodile man, who's in search of the person who turned him into a large crocodile man. Typically, the sorcerers involved in the story are experimenting on people who live in the hole by transforming them into creatures, just kind of making them into guinea pigs, so to speak. And it also follows the story of, and the crocodile man's name is Kaiman, and the girl who is his best friend, her name is Nikaido, and there's a lot of elements to the story. It's not exactly the most complex. It's kind of like
it's a
pseudo-
story of coincidences. A
Yeah,
lot of them.
a lot.
It actually reminds me of like Guy Ritchie films.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where characters just kind of bump into each other constantly,
Yeah.
and that's what creates the events and drama. But that's fine, honestly. When you have a story that the character, this is like not a character piece, so the events aren't really trying to pick the right words here. Basically, you're along for the ride for this. You're not trying to ascertain what's going to happen next, because there's no way you can. At one point you think, oh, Kaiman's going to discover who he is, and then the next episode it's just like a random baseball episode where suddenly the two opposing forces are on the opposite teams for ludicrous reasons, and it's just, you know what I mean? You kind of just have to go with the flow in that case. And what's nice about it is that you can't predict where it's going. The only downside is that, like, if you're a person that enjoys knowing where a story is progressing, then you might become a little frustrated.
Yeah,
But,
it's not explicitly anthology-esque, but like you said, there's not a lot of narrative momentum with regards to, like, the main plot of discovering the truth of Kaiman's origins or anything like that.
Everything always goes towards it, but not through, like, logical progression. It's like, oh, it just so happened that we stumbled across the guy that just discovered Kaiman's body or something like that. It's like a lot of coincidental stuff happens throughout the show. Which is fine, because we already have this kind of chaotic element throughout the environment. Chaos is a big factor, and it's an underlying theme. And you kind of see the dichotomy between Kaiman and Nikaido, who are, like residents of this chaotic realm, the whole, and they kind of, it seems like they enjoy it. Their only troubles are really like finding out Kaiman's memories, and even then he seems to enjoy the process of, like, killing sorcerers and doing stuff like that. Like, they seem to enjoy themselves as they do it.
That's like a spirit that kind of pervades the entirety of, like, the whole cast and the entire world of Dorohedoro, because it's like the world is visceral and like grim and like dark, in the sense of, like, it's very macabre, is a good way to put it. And like, you know, everything's like, it's like they live in a slum, like everything's dirty, like all the time, like there are bad conditions to all situations constantly, but everyone's like very affixed to the norm. Like everyone's kind of content. Like most people are pretty happy and like very acclimated to the very strange circumstances.
I wouldn't say, acclimated's a better term. I wouldn't say content, because they're always like trying to do something, but they're not like the good example is like if you have a friend who's like, man, I'm poor and I need money, but they don't get a job, and it's like that type of person is just like apathetic. Whereas all of these characters are like, oh man, I don't have money, I'm gonna go get a job, and then like 2 seconds later they have a job. Like that's the kind of active world these players go in. They're not content, but they're not miserable, and they're not depressed. They're just like constantly going for the next thing. And it makes for a really active story and environment, which is a lot of fun. Even on the sorcerer side of things, you see the like things are still kind of grungy in that world. It's not like a clean environment. It's just like wealthier in certain parts, and even there they have their ghetto areas. So like you never escape from that chaotic element. It's always there. It's just how the different characters go about embracing it that kind of differentiates them, because you have, I already explained like Kaiman and Nikaido, but on the other end of things, in the sorcerer's world, the main antagonist of this story is like a mobster sorcerer named N. And he kind of almost has like a goal of creating this empire through influence and power. He has, you know, his fixers, his washers, if you would, Shin and Nui, who are do the dirty work for him. But all the time, every time he's like, oh, I've got this person to do that and that person to do this, and I'll look into it with this and stuff like that. And so he's always plotting something to give himself more power. He's always doing things to try to control the outcome of the future, to the point where I think he's looking for a sorcerer that can control time. You know, stuff like that. So it's, you know, it's very clear dichotomy going on. You have the lower class embracers of chaos protagonists versus the overly orderly you know, antagonist. Like it's a pretty standard dichotomy going on here, but it works really well.
Balance is a big element of, I think, Dorohedoro, because like in all parts of it, it's there's a lot of contrast. There's like, you know, the idea of Kaiman looking for his past, and it kind of is framed in the sort of narrative structure you'd imagine for like a revenge narrative, so to speak, but it's not like a really revenge story. He just wants retribution in that regard. Or
it's more so like it's hard to put it into a modern day context, because all of our characters are fucking sociopaths. They just kill people constantly. And if they don't kill people, they like mutilate people and shit like that. So that's the chaotic element.
That's what I'm saying.
That's just always consistently going. There's no law and order. There's no justice. There's just, I want this now and I'm gonna take it if I can. And so for Kaiman, it is him trying to gain back his memory, and you know that's important. But yeah, there is also that element of just, it's not even vengeance, because it's not personal.
It's personal in the sense that it's like it's something he wants for himself, not for like, you know, not against anybody else. Obviously
it's against it's against a whole species.
He's gearing that hatred, or like the wrongdoing. He's attributing that to the entirety of sorcerer kind. And I wasn't saying like it loosely mirrors like a revenge narrative, but it instead of like having that sort of dark elements to it, even in such a like dark world, it's just the series just exudes like heavy amounts of charisma and focuses on these really bizarre, like larger than life characters. constantly, and it's fun. I mean, it's like about a big crocodile, the guy who likes eating dumplings and shit. Like,
Well, I mean, the important part is that they never make any of these people into monsters. Like, and I mean that in a literary sense. Like, even ends to Hitman, Shin and Nui,
yeah,
they are incredibly charismatic and have their own like moral code, more or less.
yeah,
Now that code does not include, I shouldn't say moral code. They have their own like world philosophy, and their actions coincide with that. I actually really kind of attached to Shin. Like, I kind of like him because don't get me wrong, he's a fucking sociopath, and he like chops people up while they're alive and shit like that. But he has the philosophy of you need a few beatings to understand what you need to do in this world, because he really, like, what he does is always in retaliation to what happens to him. You know what I mean? He's a very reactionary character, and he's very cool about everything. And I don't know, I kind of appreciate that in that regard. Like, because once you hear his backstory, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense why he's just kind of a sociopathic asshole. But he's not like comically sociopathic. He doesn't just kill random people for no reason. He's like, no, I have a job to do, and this is why I do it. Whereas before, he was killing people for vengeance and stuff like that, kind of like Kaiman was doing.
yeah.
And like it makes for a really cool character that's down to earth and somewhat relatable, if you're able to disregard the fact that he kills people.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fascinating in that regard. The characters in the story, none of them are nobody has black and white like morality when it comes to what you get from the whole cast of Dorohedoro. Like, you look at even N, and his clan of sorcerers, like, they should be effectively like the evilest dudes in the story, but like, they've made deals with the devil, and I'm pretty sure they live like technically within close proximity to hell.
Yes.
But yeah, but like, they're portrayed as like normal people with like their own lives and vices and complex motivations and like things they like to do. Like,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're people, more or less. N is very, you see him. It's so interesting because N's power. So we didn't explain that sorcerers have like very unique magic powers, based on the individual. But N's power is just to turn things into mushrooms.
yeah,
Which you wouldn't think is that strong, but it's his like cleverness and the moments where he does become dangerous that show you how he got to his position. But outside of that, he's like a guy who owns restaurants and like, enjoys making music and random ass shit like that. He's very much an entrepreneur, where he just is always thinking of ways to get money and to earn money and shit like that. He actually reminds me of from Breaking Bad, Gus.
I have not seen Breaking
Like,
Bad, but
oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, whatever,
Okay.
it's fine.
one day.
He reminds me of this like kind of, this entrepreneur who's out for himself, but he's smart about it. He's a businessman. He knows he needs people to work for him. He knows he needs people to do things for him, and he will manipulate them in a way that they feel accepted and they feel like they're being useful. He's not the maniacal, comical bad guy. He's very flawed in his own minor ways, but once you switch that trigger on, that makes him dangerous. It's really scary in those moments. The cast in general is really, really good. The only one I'm not like even, I was gonna say Kaiman, but even then Kaiman has his moments too. I just think he's a little thick-headed at times. Yeah,
but I mean, it's very, it's fun like that, and the way I think that embodies the spirit of like what you were saying. Like, there are some times where the drama can be turned on. Like, from the outside, you think it's a story of like, I guess like anti-heroes and like monsters, like villains, but like, first and foremost, the way like everybody is written is that these characters are people, normal ass people.
Yeah, very normal. If they had like hyperbolic powers and shit.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
Striking design. The whole world is stylish, but these characters are like just normal people underneath the masks and the lizard skin, which is I think a really fun like oddball thing about this whole series in general. So, but yeah, from a production standpoint, it was just something that we were talking about earlier, like the 3D and the 2D, and I feel like it's done pretty effectively. Not to harp on it too much. I think the whole world is done. Like from a production standpoint as a whole, I think that they did a pretty good job. Mappa. They've done a lot of good work anyway in general. Like they've done Kids on the Slope, Yuri on Ice.
Oh, they did Kids on the Slope. Jesus.
Yeah,
Okay.
they did a lot. They did Zombieland Saga, fucking Dorohedoro.
Oh wow.
One of the Ippo seasons. They're doing the last season of fucking Attack on Titan.
Oh wow. Okay, great. Yeah. No, they do good work. The only thing I would suggest, if anybody's listening to this part, is that you watch it on a TV in a dark room, because there are moments that the visuals get very dark in terms of the blackness, and so if you have light in your background, you might not be able to see anything on the fucking screen.
I was at a low population party recently, and I was tuning out for a minute, and I put on one of the episodes, and the room was lit, obviously.
like on your phone.
Yeah, on my phone. Yeah, and there's a scene where like N is like in the darkness somewhere, and like fucking hard to see this dude. Like just
I can't
I knew
see
it was
anything.
Him. I knew it was him, but yeah, it was hard.
That's the point. I'm not knacking on Mappa for doing that. Like the intent is that, like they say, there's a couple characters that say a few lines of like, oh, the chaos is darkness, and we're going into the darkness, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But it is very hard to see if you don't have like, a good
lighting situation.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, for sure. That's something.
I actually didn't check out the dub. I should see who's on the dub, because like I could see a voice cast making or breaking this show.
Yeah, I mean, you and I definitely probably watched the sub. I didn't get a dub either. I know that your boy, well, not your boy, but a boy that you may know, that like Kaiman's is voiced by Wataru Takagaki, who does Okayasu from Diamond is Unbreakable.
Oh yeah, that is him. Oh yeah. He does a great job at those like lovable idiot characters.
Yeah, he has like the really kind of like sort of like new age Kuwabara kind of fucking knucklehead syndrome's voice, which is pretty fun. But yeah,
no, the cast in this is great. Like I can't think of anybody that doesn't do a good job. I think the show is just like a strong contender. Probably never gonna be in my top 5, just because like the overly grotesque series kind of don't really go anywhere for me in terms of like being absolutely stellar. Like I'm thinking of stuff like Gantz and trying to think of other shows. Berserk almost falls in that category sometimes.
Berserk can be pretty hyper-violent, a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me personally, but it's when it's all the other stuff in the background that really kind of catches me off guard. And yeah, the soundtrack's like fucking stellar. It's good, like pop psychedelic.
Oh,
shit.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, I mean, definitely a big thumbs up. Even if it's not in your top 5 overall, I would say it's probably top 5 so far for me this year.
That's fair.
Yeah, for 2020, I mean, not that it's a year marred by a few struggles here or there, but
I actually don't know if it would end up in top 5 now that I'm thinking about it.
For this year,
but it's just because of the other stuff that came out. But that's a discussion for another time.
Another time when we get closer to the end of this fucking dreadful year. But yeah, well, I mean, I feel like we've kind of covered everything we wanted to talk about.
I think we covered everything. The only other thing I would bring up is like it's something that is fairly obvious, where the setting is a situation of 2 classes. You have like the people in the hole and the people in the sorcery. And even how do I put this? When you have that dichotomy, it's important to show how the similarities and differences between the two. so that you can sympathize with both at some level.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they go about it in this show is by spending half of the season in the Hole and half of the season in the Sorcerer's Realm, more or less. Like, the setting changes halfway through the show. I think that's smart. I think they did a very good job of it, and all the side stories kind of help you get a better picture of how the whole world works as a whole, while not telling you everything up front.
Mm-hmm.
The show will give you like 10 questions and then answer 3 of them. And I'm okay with that personally. I know there's some people who love their expository dialogue. I'm not one of them. And the show just kind of just trails you along. It really does feel like a fantasy Guy Ritchie movie, because it's just so much like random ass crime related crap that just goes on and on and on.
I really like the world. I really like it from like a visual data element of it. Like the manga, which is done by Q Hayashida.
I think the artwork in the manga is a lot better, to be quite honest.
I did get a chance to look at it, and it's a really, like, again, it's not like colored up, but like it feels colorful, and I feel like they did do a pretty good job of bringing that color and texture to like realization. A lot of the background art is actually done by Kimura Shinji, who did work on Akira. And I feel like it kind of, I don't know, it kind of brings a lightness to like what again, it should be a pretty grim setting. And like you were saying, there's also a good dichotomy between the two main locations. Like, you've got like the sorcerer dimension, which is like characterized mostly by like, I don't know, like traditional high fantasy shits, in the background. And then you've got like the Hole, which is just a bunch of like metal industrial structures and twisting pipes and like rusted fucking shit everywhere.
Yeah.
So
there is one cool moment though, because we get a flashback of Shin's backstory, and in it you see a time in the Hole where there was a group of denizens that like fought back against the sorcerers, and like the Hole looks a lot better in those flashbacks. So you kind of get a sense of like what the sorcerers have done to this world over time.
Yeah, that they've been fucking up.
Yeah, but at the same time, again, it's so violent. Like the way they dealt with the sorcerers was just like killing them and putting their heads on pikes, and you get this imagery of like French Revolution era, stuff, and you kind of wonder, is the author going for like a statement that it wasn't just the sorcerers, it was the fall of this like society as well. It's interesting.
I feel like it's always a little bit of bouncing between the empathy for both. Like even early on, like when like Kaiman has to like basically throw away that sorcerer that's in the garbage bag. Like there's always like little moments of like where you see things from both sides of this conflict, and like neither one are explicitly better than the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like in this world there are fates worse than death.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like death is treated so nonchalantly, but like there are things that are way worse that people give dignity to, or that people respect. In terms of like, okay, you know what, I could keep talking to you as you're mutilated, but I could just kill you instead. So I'll just kill you to put you out of your misery, more or less. I feel like we're making the show sound a lot deeper than it actually is.
I mean, from a design standpoint, I'm pretty sure they thought of these things.
I think the design is deep. I think it's just the execution might not be as deep as we're making it out to be, but who knows.
But it's fun. It's fun to look at.
It is. Yeah, and it's probably a show I would return to once the second season comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't say I'm too invested in the character drama, like who Nikaido really is and Kaiman really are. Like, I'm not really that interested, to be honest. I'm much more interested to see just what's going to happen next, because there's so much just random ass crap that happens in this show.
Like where it ends as far as like their pursuits, as far as like how they end up back together after their brief time apart, and their journey forward from there. Like it it doesn't interest me in the deepest regard, like you said.
No.
Um,
It,
from,
it
from,
actually
from
kind of reminds me. It kind of reminds me of Attack on Titan, where like it's set up to be this big mystery show, but at the end of the day, it's not what I really care about. I care more about like what the characters are doing in one given moment, and like, eventually we'll get there, sure, but like it has much more to do with the moment to moment situations than it does with the overarching plot.
Yeah, I think that what really brings me back is just the insanity of it all. It's just like the very wild premise, the macabre world, and like despite like all the whimsy and horror, there's like a nice, very earnest kind of heart of gold somewhere in the middle of all that. That just kind of like is like, you know what, I like that. Which is the main reason why I think people will enjoy Dorohedoro, even though it's paced breakneck fast and like there's a lot of shit that happens, and it's visceral and it's like gruesome and it's extremely colorful. There's a lot of stimuli coming off this.
Absolutely. And they kind of know it too. Like, so for this 12 episode show, they have 4 different ending themes for this 12 episode thing. They clearly know that this show rides on the novelty of the new. And so if they can keep that up, if they can keep showing new and weird shit, then yeah, you'll keep the audience's attention pretty well.
That's a good spirit. I mean, like, I feel like that's good on Mappa to honor that, what Hayashida had put down. I just looked at the dates, too. It took her a long time to finish this, because it's a 23-volume series, but she started in 99. It didn't finish until 2018.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I also didn't know it was a female author. It's interesting.
Yeah, it was a female author. But
got interesting designs for the female cast as well. You have like a whole variety of body types.
Yeah, you got like the kid whose face gets ripped off, and you got like Nikaido, who's a little bit more atypical, but then you got like Noi, who's like this hulking mass.
Yeah. And even then in the flashback, she's like typical schoolgirl.
Yeah.
And then somehow when training with Shin just got like swole as fuck.
Yeah.
Like I mean like Schwarzenegger swole as fuck. It's insane.
Incredibly muscular.
Which is great if you have regeneration powers, but hey.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how. Because every time she like
possibly
flexes. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Probably not a good idea to think too much about it.
All right. Well, I think that we'll cap it there. And but we hope you guys maybe check out Dorohedoro on Netflix. If you do, let us know some of your thoughts. If you have already, do you guys think the series is great? Do you think it's ass? Do you think it's something that you should pass on, or do you think that everybody should be streaming on it? Just let us know your thoughts and opinions. If you enjoyed today's podcast, go ahead and hit the like, put a sub up. We'd appreciate it, just so we know what you guys are interested in and want to talk about with us. Chris has the Twitter handle, which I still don't remember.
It's just the Otaku Remix, at the Otaku Remix.
Yes.
You can find us both there. You can find me personally at Houseman2593. You'll find a bunch of fighting game shit, and I coach at the New Challenger Discord. So if you're getting into fighting games and stuff like that, feel free to stop by there. But for anime stuff, definitely check out the Otaku Remix.
Yes. But that's all we got for today, so everyone listening, thank you so much. Have a good day. Have a good life. We'll see you all on the next one.